Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Strategic Success Podcast. Today's episode, I have a message to my friends in the real estate industry, specifically to my friends that are real estate agents. So, you sell real estate every day. You know the market, the deals, the numbers, neighborhoods better than probably a lot of investors that you know. But let me ask you, how much do you actually own? Most real estate agents, thankfully, can say they own their own house. And that's a good start, right? Most people's wealth is in their own primary house, right? We know this. But beyond that, let's talk about investing in real estate as a real estate agent. So many agents know they need to, but they don't. Why? I think it's because a lot of them don't understand why. They don't prioritize it. They don't know how to actually start doing it. So let's talk about it. If you're great at helping other people build wealth through owning properties, especially if you're living commission to commission, this episode's for you. Okay. And yeah, it's going to sting a little because I want to talk about some hard truths. But in this episode, I want to share some wealth building tips that every real estate agent, or maybe some of my other friends who are in the industry, mortgage brokers, title company folks, insurance, contractors, things of the like. These tips are something that you should know, but the goal is to get your butt off the sidelines and get you putting putting that knowledge into action and actually helping change you and your family's future. I want you to start building wealth with real estate. And let's be honest, you don't need a whole lot more knowledge. You mostly just need a wake up call. Maybe that's true, right? Maybe that's true for you. So, the first tip I want to give you is that for your sake and your family's sake, stop being real estate adjacent. Meaning, you know a lot about real estate and you help a lot of people, like I mentioned, build wealth through real estate. But are you doing it for yourself? If all you're doing it is helping other people, that's a problem, right? You're being real estate adjacent. I've talked about it a lot. Like, think about being a financial advisor, right? You're helping people build and manage their wealth. But if you weren't doing the same for yourself, like that means then that you're just what, good at sales, right? Like knowledgeable about the market and good at sales. At the end of the day, when years and decades have passed, you being good at sales and knowledgeable about the market, it'll have made you a salary, but will it have actually built you wealth? That's up to you. Like that truly, truly is up to you. Too often, I've sat across the table from agents and brokers who've been in the business for 20 years who said, I want to start investing. I've always meant to, but I never got around to it. And they are, they they're full of regret because their eyes, they knew that they needed to do it and all of a sudden they blinked and time evaporated in front of them and they're like, I remember when houses were this, and they're speaking about all the benefits of time, but they never started. Don't let that be you. Don't just be real estate adjacent. Commit to it right now, even if you have to write it down and use it as an affirmation. I am not just real estate adjacent. I will invest in real estate and build wealth, right? Like commit to that, right? So many people in the industry are just adjacent to it, but they don't get the benefits of it. Don't let that be you. So, tip number two, I want to address that a very uncommon truth. Let me say it that way. Flips are not real estate investing. Very often, real estate agents are like, oh, yeah, I'm about to start investing in real estate. We're going to get into some flips. And so I usually say, let me hold your hand while I tell you this. That is not investing. That is Uncle Sam treats it the same as your real estate commission, right? Yeah, it's another, what you're doing is another business. right? And yes, the money can be nice, right? You can make good money doing that. I've flipped plenty of properties over the years. But the reality is that is not what is going to change your family's future. That is not wealth building. That is pumping up your salary, right? My mentor once told me one time that flips, and then he also talked about commissions because he was an agent for a decade. He said flips and commissions, they leave you with great stories, but guess what the flippers do when they drive around town? Real estate agents, you probably do this too. Oh, I helped them sell that house. I helped my client sell that house. I helped my client buy that. Flippers, oh, I flipped that house over there. I flipped that, or builders, right? I built that house. I did that. So what does that leave you around town doing? Telling great stories. But the reality is, I know folks who have been business owners, right? Contractors, like builders, attorneys, real estate agents, all of those things for decades. They have so many great stories. But you know what they don't have? Equity. The reality there is you've got to start converting your knowledge in real estate into something that will change your financial future. Truly, your future is depending on it. You don't want to just be full of good stories, truly. So, flips, let's be very clear. It can help you with today money. It can basically help you with your salary. But I would highly encourage you, the real wealth, the real benefits come from holding them. Okay. So, got to make that little mindset shift. Investing is not flipping, investing is buying to hold the properties for a good period of time. So, the tip number three, the number one regret that many real estate investors have, actually, I'm not going to say every because that feels like such a strong one, but so many, though, is a strong representation of this is such a common regret in the real estate investing community is that they didn't start soon enough, right? I remember when I helped someone who was 18 buy their first property, and I was like, man, and I started at 25, right? I mean, or 7 years, after that. But man, I wish I would have started buying at 18. I wish I knew. I wish I figured it out. I wish I would have started then. Um, but I didn't know, right? I didn't know, and I didn't have the tools, and I didn't have the conviction to start. So a huge part of that is so many of the benefits that come with real estate are tied to time, right? So why is that the number one regret? It's because of the time factor, right? I wish I would have started sooner is so full disclosure, I turned 35 this year. When I was 18, it was 2008. Yes, I wish I invested in real estate then, right? I mean, I was too busy graduating high school and figuring out my next steps, but I wish I would have been able to take advantage of what was happening then, right? So some of that is market cycles, right? It's oh, like I wish I would have been able to invest, years ago when, you know, during a down market like 2008 or whatever. But it's also like I mentioned earlier, oh, I remember so there's a neighborhood I'm thinking of now. I own a house in it worth 235. I remember when you could frequently buy houses in that neighborhood for 50 to 80 grand. I wish I would have bought more than the ones, that I own in that neighborhood now. Part of that time factor, the time benefits is, the appreciation, right? The values going up. Um, Another time benefit is I predominantly buy using leverage, right? So other people's money. And so with time, my tenants are paying off my houses for me, right? So the mortgage is going, a 30-year mortgage, right? You're paying it down over time. And so one of the biggest things you can do is to get the clock started, get that clock started. Um, and so many people say, I knew better, but I never started. So one of the biggest problems is you have to not just know better, not just know what to do, but you have to freaking start. That is the hardest. I mean, that is everyone's Mount Everest is starting, right? But then once you start, it's, sticking with it, right? Um, Real estate has so many benefits, right? So ideal, right? Income, so that's cash flow. Uh, D is depreciation, so that's tax benefits. E is equity, so that's equity pay down. So that's the pay down on the mortgage. A is appreciation, so that's the value going up over time, and L is leverage, right? You can pay a, you can pay a mortgage off, and now you have a free and clear property. Well, now you can go get another mortgage on it if you wanted to, right? So all of those things are like there's a lot of benefits with real estate. Um, I'll be honest, as a real estate investor, especially in the beginning years, the main benefits are tax benefits. Like that is, and most of you business owners, that's what you need right now. You need tax benefits, right? To offset all of that active income that your thriving business is making. And so you don't need a massive amount of cash flow, right? Because your business is giving you that, right? You need rentals to start doing the majority of it. Your main benefit is the tax one, right? So to offset your big tax issue. But then the other part to that is you need all the benefits tied with time, basically to get that clock started, right? And but so many people only focus on the cash flow part. Yes, that part's important, but it's the last benefit. It's the very last benefit, right? Stop giving your money to Uncle Sam and start keeping it in your family. Truly. With the tax benefits that real estate provides, if you're paying a big tax bill every year, start owning some freaking real estate. Stop paying Uncle Sam a huge bill every year for your taxes and start keeping in your family by owning real estate. Point in case. Warren Buffett, he said, here's my next tip for you. Warren Buffett said, if you don't find a way to make money while you sleep, you're going to have to work until you die. This is so critical. Recently in the news, there was a woman who was 100 years old selling real estate. And it was, they were like, oh, it's so cute. She's passionate about it. My very first thought was, for her sake, I hope to God she does not have to work, right? And if all you have is your business for your income, you you've got to have a plan for tomorrow, right? You've got to have a retirement plan of some sort. The worst time to start building a retirement plan is when you are retired and trying to retire, right? Because that means your runway is so much shorter, right? So the best time to start is when you have a longer runway, right? So the sooner, remember that time part, you got to start sooner. But let's be very honest. Since 2022, transactions have been down. A lot of people's business income has been impacted by the current market cycle that we're in, right? If you had multiple streams of income, you would be doing better, right? So keep those things in mind, right? Like, are you depending on just one thing? One of the things I love about my real estate investments, they're all different streams of income, all of my properties that, once you buy you get a deal done, you stabilize it, meaning you get it, fixed up, you get it rented out, things like that. And I mean, that property pays me on the first of every month. Sure, there are times when it's vacant or the tenant isn't paying, right? And that's where you have to maintain that stream of income. So there is some work required to maintain that income stream. But the majority of the time on the first of the month, I'm getting multiple. Look, I have 57 properties. I'm getting paid on the first of the month. And it's, yes, I still, again, there's some work included, but I'm making money while I sleep because I did this deal once and now I'm just maintaining that stream of income, right? So I've got my property managers that are dealing with the tenants, the toilets, and all of that. And yeah, I've got to make sure that they're performing and stuff like that. But, so many real estate agents and business owners, they're, so dependent on transactions, right? And they get paid one time from them. There's a bit, that is fine for your salary, but that is not going to help you build wealth and prepare for tomorrow. A really hard money lesson I had to learn and wrap my head around is you've got to get away from labor-based income. So let's talk about it. So think about your labor-based income means you have to go out and work for it to come, right? So if you have a W-2 job, that means you have to show up for work that day, clock in, work, and clock out. You're going to get paid for that, right? As a real estate agent, you've got to have leads, convert them into sellers or buyers, and the ultimate close deals to where you then get paid a commission. Well, what if you got hurt and you were in ICU for 60 days? Sure, your business might have some automations and you might have some folks that you delegate to where you could keep making some money. But the reality there is so many people, their income is dependent on them waking up and going to get, trade their hours for dollars. I want to get to a place, and I'm working very hard to get to this place where my income is predominantly coming from my investments and not from labor-based income. Now, keep in mind that labor-based income is the most inefficient income because of how heavily taxed it is as well. So keep that in mind, right? Around 30% is what your active income is roughly taxed at, give or take. And definitely it depends on the state you live in, right? That matters. But investment income is differently taxed, right? So it's more advantageous type of income. And so those things are super important to keep in mind. The two main sources of income, investment income you should keep an eye out for is rent, right? So we're talking about rentals, or interest. So if you are a lender, you lend money and you earn interest on that money, right? In stocks, they have dividends and stuff like that. Or you have, sell a house on owner financing and you're earning interest. Interest is really just rent on money, right? Like someone is paying rent on the money that they, are utilizing. And so rent and interest are, the two main forms of investment income that I am seeking out. And I like to have a healthy, balance of the two, right? So I have both in my portfolios. I've got my rental portfolio, and then I've got a portfolio of notes. So these are properties I've sold on financing, that are just a little bit different. The demands are just a little bit different than the rentals, right? And so I want to encourage you to build a portfolio, right? A one and done, one rental is, although it can help, most people, their life would be changed with 5 rental properties, right? And so I would encourage you to build a goal to own 5 rental properties. And then after that goal, you can reassess. When you reassess, you can maybe say, I don't need to buy any more. Maybe say, hey, you know what? Based on our income goals and all of that, really for our retirement plan, we need 15. My family's goal is 25, right? And so I have a lot more than that right now. So we're kind of downsizing and upping our quality of properties, but that's our personal goals, right? But I want to encourage you to collect rent and interest and get to a point where your family is not afraid of where, their next meal is coming from. So meaning you have consistent income coming in, consistent cash flow coming in to where that, your family is taken care of. Then focus on things like equity, right? And so a huge part of that, again, the businesses are great, right? But if you truly want to focus on getting away from labor-based income, focus on cash flow, right? Collect rent and interest until you have enough of that coming in that your family's needs can be met. So that also requires you to know what your monthly demands are financially wise, right? For some people, that might be 3 grand. Some people, that might be 13 grand. For some bougie people, it might be 30 grand, right? And so you've got to know what those numbers are, and then work towards building streams of income that replace you having to get up and work, right? So if you don't have to get up and work to earn that money, that means you have time freedom, financial freedom, you can go travel, but then you're getting to a place where you don't have to work. If something happened to you, would your family be okay? So here's my last tip for you. If you don't have a plan for tomorrow money, right? So you call it your retirement plan, things like that. If you do not have a plan on how you're going to, have money without you getting up and earning it, right? Through a commission, through any other business model, each day having to get up and go earn it. If you are not actively owning assets, right, that produce cash flow, that grow in value, things like that, you are destined to live on a fixed income. One of the most common things that is tied to fixed income is living off of Social Security. Fun fact, one of the things that drove me to investing in real estate was truly, I did not want to be dependent, right? I did not want to be dependent on the government. So dependent on like Social Security. I'm 35. It may not even be there, right? Although I've paid into it over the years, I may not get to see any of the fruit of that program. So politics aside, it is a faulty system. And if you know anyone who's living on, Social Security, they are on a fixed income. So I did not want to depend on the government. I did not want to depend on a pension, right? Like go work for the man for, 40 years and earn a pension. A lot of companies don't even offer that anymore, right? Like that's not even an option, predominantly these days. But you know, because issues can happen with that. Like there's issues that could happen with Social Security. There's issues that could happen with a pension, right? That company, plenty of companies are struggling to go bankrupt with their pension plans, right? They're at risk of that, right? And I didn't want to depend on like a spouse or family or some like future inheritance or anything like that. So what did I want to do? I wanted independence. I wanted to say, I know that I am in charge of my financial future and I am going to do everything I can to not put myself to where I am going to struggle on a fixed income. I have never met someone who's on a fixed income who is not struggling, especially with inflation, right? You guys know what I'm talking about, right? Do not set yourself up to live in a like a survival mode, right? Dependent on all those other sources. Extreme ownership is required. Your life, one of the best phrases I've ever heard is your life is your fault. So whatever objections and excuses you have, you've got to overcome them. Whatever limiting beliefs you have that's stopping you from getting your first or your first 5 rental properties, you have got to call them out, address them, and overcome them. You've got to take that personal responsibility for your future and your financial future, right? So let's get into some practical advice here as I start to wrap up. You've got to be convinced that this is necessary and you have got to get committed to it. If not, you are going to blink and 20 years will have passed and you will have a shorter runway to start later on. So you want to start as soon as possible, but I can't make you do it, right? Like you've got to have that internal commitment to start, right? To be able to overcome Mount Everest to get to where you do your first deal, right? But then you've got to build a plan and attack it. You've got to get very clear. I've done some other episodes on this. Look at shiny object, the one that's called the opposite of shiny object syndrome. There's another one that is And I'll try to link it at the end. There's another one that is, Lamborghinis or extended vacations, where those two episodes talk about getting very clear on how you want real estate to serve you and getting, super clear on what you want. But let me cut through all the bull and say, go get 5 rental properties. Your life would be tremendously improved if you just started with 5. At the end of the day, those 5, again, you can always build on top of it from there, but those 5, can give you tax benefits today while you are actively, working on, your real estate business, right? And the income that provides that covers your bills, right? But those 5, over time, you will pay them down. They will go up in value, right? You can re-leverage them if you wanted to, right? Pull some money out with a refinance. And yes, even some cash flow. I'm going to encourage you that cash flow should go into reserves until they can depend on themselves, right? Until there's enough money in the bank that if, a water heater has an issue, you don't have to pull out of your own pocket, right? But you've got to build a plan and attack it, okay? Where are you going to find these properties? How are you going to finance them? And who's going to manage them? What makes something a deal for you, right? You've got to figure those things out for yourself and then attack that, right? So you've got to get a clear plan. Courtney, how do I do that? You got to start getting around conversations with real estate investors. If all the conversations you are about buying and selling real estate as a real estate agent, great. What are you going to do? You're going to improve your real estate agent business. But if you want to also grow in becoming a real estate investor, you've got to start getting around conversations around investing. You've got to start meeting with people who are investors, right? And as you start getting around the conversations, you grow into the conversations you're around. And so if you're not around any conversations around investing, not just the theory of it, but people are actually doing it, there's no reason. There's no wonder you're not investing yourself. So you got to surround yourself. I'm talking podcasts like this one. I'm talking books. I'm talking, the local real estate investor meetups that many communities around the US have that are, free or for a small fee to attend. Going to conferences about real estate investing, things like that, getting into rooms to where you can then grow around it, right? And grow into it. Learn how other people did it, right? Learn from those. You don't have to reinvent the wheel, right? Find out how people who didn't have money overcame it and started investing. If that's your objection, if your objection is, I don't have time, right? How do people who have a full-time W-2 invest in real estate on the side? You do not have to reinvent the wheel, right? If you don't have an idea of where to start, you're just simply uneducated. So then you got to help yourself by getting educated to where you find out information that is also instruction based, right? You need to go do this, start here, do this, right? So stop confusing a lack of resources, primarily money, with a lack of resourcefulness. Let me say that again. If you have not started investing in real estate because you do not have the time or you do not have the money, stop confusing a lack of resources for a lack of resourcefulness. You truly are just limited in your thinking, right? Limiting beliefs, but also in your skill sets and your relationships. You have got to address those. You've got to call them out, say, hey, here are my limiting beliefs around investing in real estate. Here are my objections. And then you've got to find solutions to that and overcome it. Attack your objections. Build a plan and start sooner rather than later. Because truly you have less time than you think. So again, what's the number one regret of investors? Is that they didn't start sooner. So learn from our mistakes and get started. You could, before this calendar year is up, buy your first property if you prioritized it, if you built a plan and attacked it. That is my hope for you. My hope is that I'm not going to sit across the table from you in 20 years and you say, Courtney, I've been selling real estate all this time and I knew better. I knew I needed to build toward my financial future so I didn't have to work until I die. And I knew that I could have benefited my family by investing in real estate, but I never started. What a heartbreaking moment that would be. Vow right now that that is not going to be you. So, my friends, you've got a financial, if this is you, this is speaking to you, you've got a financial problem. And it is up to you to fix your financial future. Truly, your life is your fault. I appreciate you guys listening today. I am cheering you on. You truly can do this, right? People invest in real estate all the time who have less resources, who are less smart, who have less understanding than you do, right? Like you understand the real estate world, my friends. You are the only one that's stopping you from investing in real estate. And I hope that for your sake, that changes for your future. Appreciate you listening to today's episode. Appreciate you tuning in for the next one.